Have you ever imagined having your own soul plunged into a heavenly furnace? Imagine feeling the heat of a sacred fire consuming every impurity, revealing what is hidden deep within your heart. Today, we will delve together into the story of a prophetic dream, a spiritual vision that forever changed the life of an ordinary person, showing how God can use even the most intense flames to guide us toward grace. Have you ever experienced this? Perhaps you've never experienced anything so impactful, but the power of a spiritually refining experience can be as real as the air we breathe. Since biblical times, dreams and visions of spiritual warning have served as a channel for God to speak directly to our innermost being. On this journey, we will discover how the heavenly furnace works, not as a symbol of punishment, but as an instrument of purification and divine love. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover now may surprise you and bring a new perspective on your own challenges and weaknesses. Without realizing it, many of us carry emotional and spiritual residue that will only be eliminated when we pass through this transformative fire. Throughout this introduction, I want you to already feel the presence of this fire, as if it were just inches away from you, warming your faith and awakening the desire for inner change. Through dreams and visions, God shows us that we are not alone, that He is attentive to every detail of our lives and desires to reborn us in justice and truth. If you've ever questioned the purpose of your trials, this story will light the way for you to understand that every trial can be an invitation to intimacy with the Most High. In this video, we'll reveal how the soul that entered the heavenly furnace was confronted with its own fears, doubts, and secrets, and how, through divine refinement, it was transformed into a new creation. I'll share sensory details so you can feel the heat of the flames, hear the echo of angelic voices, and, above all, experience the peace that arises when God removes what was preventing the flame of the Spirit from burning freely in our lives. Are you ready to understand the profound meaning of this encounter with the purifying fire? So, stay focused and keep your heart open to receive each revelation. As we delve deeper into the narrative, I want you to reflect, what areas of your life need this sacred heat to be purified? What does the past still bring up in your dreams? Have you been through this? This question serves to help each of us see ourselves in the story we're about to tell, feeling the impact of something greater operating silently. With each passing second, more details of the vision will be revealed, and perhaps you'll recognize parts of yourself in this process of refinement. Now, prepare to enter the heavenly furnace through the eyes of someone who lived this experience, and, most importantly, to understand how God transforms pain into purpose and trial into victory. Don't miss it. In the next part, we'll explore the exact moment the protagonist felt the heat rise, when fear nearly overwhelmed him and faith emerged like an unquenchable flame. And so, you'll begin to understand how divine grace works when we decide to surrender our souls to the fire of love. As the heat began to rise, I felt every beat of my heart pulsing amid the flames, as if each spark were a call to abandon old habits and trust fully in God's goodness. If this journey of purification resonated with you in any way, leave a comment below with what touched you most, whether it was a dream, a vision, or even a desire for change that you carry in your heart. Your participation is what makes this channel grow and reach more people in need of this message of hope. If this topic resonates with you, don't forget to like the video. A simple thumbs up helps spread this story and strengthen our community of faith. And, of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next prophetic revelations we're preparing with such care. Now, returning to the vision. I remember when the most intense flames seemed to want to consume me completely. I'm an ordinary person, just like you, who for many years lived in a routine of doubts and insecurities. Until God entered the backstage of my mind and granted me a prophetic vision so intense that it completely changed my mindset. I share this experience here through a channel with credibility in prophetic messages, whose greatest purpose is to bring hope and awaken hearts to the transformation that only the Almighty can bring about. I'm not a famous pastor, nor a theological scholar. I'm someone who received, in a moment of silence and prayer, the revelation that my soul would be subjected to a heavenly furnace process of purification that would expose every decision not aligned with God's truth and lead me to a new stage of faith. In that instant, I felt the impact of a hidden reality, a truth beyond my physical senses. Flames of inconceivable heat enveloped my being, not to destroy, but to refine. Every memory of failure, every insecurity held deep within me, was brought to the surface like raw metal ready to be worked. It was a painful journey, as the fire of the Spirit drew attention to thought patterns I hadn't even known I harbored. Yet, there was comfort amidst the flames of certainty that God's purpose was to shape my character, strengthening me to face future challenges with courage and unwavering faith. As the vision progressed, I realized it wasn't just symbols or metaphors. It was an invitation to rethink my decisions and embrace a renewed mindset. I saw familiar faces, brothers and sisters who might need to go through this same refining experience so their faith can become incandescent. capable of illuminating the path of others. Transformation isn't a one-off event, but an ongoing process of recognizing where the soul needs repair. And this heavenly furnace made it clear that without removing impurities, there's no way to remain steadfast on the spiritual path. In the midst of this shocking moment, I understood that every tear shed into the fire was a sign of God's unconditional love, willing to use even the most intense heat to guide us back to the path of holiness. The hidden truth of our weaknesses was revealed, not to condemn us, but to free us. I then felt a profound peace spread through my essence, as if the Creator himself were whispering, "I am refining you to fulfill a greater purpose." This revelation brought new meaning to my journey. We are not mere spectators of the events of our lives, but protagonists of a divine script that operates in every detail. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want you to imagine the furnace not just as fire, but as moments of crisis that force us to look within, make courageous decisions, and trust in God's guidance. Imagine a transformation that goes beyond superficial adjustments. It's about allowing the purifying fire to reach the core of your identity, refining dreams, adjusting mindsets, and strengthening convictions. When our choices begin to reflect the hidden truth of the Word, the impact on our daily lives and on the people around us is extraordinary. In the heavenly furnace, I realized that each phase of refinement had a specific purpose. First, the fire revealed impurities in my relationship with God. Then, it exposed emotional wounds I'd carried since childhood. And finally, it paved the way for my faith to blossom into unwavering courage and love. It was like watching behind the scenes of a great work of art being created, where every detail had to be perfect for the final result to reflect the glory of the Lord. This experience taught me that the process of purification is as important as the result, for in it we learn to trust, not in our own strength, but in the faithfulness of the one who calls us by name. While experiencing this vision, I also felt the presence of angels around me, confirming that I was not walking alone. Their voices were not physically audible, but echoed in my spirit, telling me that I need not fear the intense heat, for that furnace was, in fact, the manifestation of God's love occurring within me. This revelation strengthened my conviction that, even amidst the greatest trials, the Almighty is silently working, transforming every difficulty into an opportunity for growth. Commenting here, which word or phrase from this experience resonated with you most will be a simple gesture, but of great value to me and to the entire community embarking on this journey of faith. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we talk about dreams and visions of spiritual warning, we are entering a realm where the visible and the invisible converge in surprising ways, almost as if we were witnessing the backstage of a grand divine production. In the prophetic tradition, both in the Bible and in accounts by Christians throughout the centuries, these dreams appear as direct messages from above, alerts that arrive while we sleep to prepare us, correct our course, or lead us to decisions that will impact not only our lives but our entire environment. Imagine receiving a clue before reaching a crossroads. That is exactly what these experiences symbolize, a kind of heavenly signpost that shows us where we need to adjust our course, avoid dangers, and align our hearts with the hidden truth that God wishes to reveal. For those who have never studied the subject, think of warning dreams as safety alerts in a high-end car. When the dashboard lights up red or yellow, we are not being punished, but rather informed that something requires immediate attention. Perhaps the oil is low or the engine is overheating. Likewise, prophetic dreams arise so that we are not caught off guard by life's difficulties or the mistakes we insist on repeating. They are an invitation to transformation, an opportunity to stop, reflect, and make wiser choices before the consequences worsen. It is as if God, in His mercy, gave us the instruction manual in advance to avoid drastic failures. In practice, these visions can manifest in many ways, sometimes as clear symbols, water overflowing, indicating that our emotions are out of control, other times as dramatic scenes of storm approaching, signaling imminent conflicts to be resolved, and sometimes a bright light that brings comfort, heralding restoration. The crucial point is that everything happens on a spiritual level, but reverberates in our physical and emotional reality. The analogy is simple. Just as we can dream that we are falling and wake up startled, this dream being merely a reflection of our body relaxing, the prophetic dream carries a deeper purpose, acting as a channel of divine revelations to awaken us to truths we tend to ignore. But furthermore, the prophetic tradition teaches us that the process of interpreting these dreams requires spiritual sensitivity, the study of Scripture, and, above all, a heart willing to listen. This is not speculation or fantasy, but discernment in prayer. It's like learning an unknown language. At first, everything seems enigmatic, but with practice and intimacy with the source, each symbol is decoded, revealing precise instructions for our journey. And it is precisely this learning journey that transforms our mindset, opening our minds to consider the possibility that God communicates with us in ways far richer and more varied than we imagine. When I understood this, in the vision of the heavenly furnace, I realized that each scene I saw had a didactic purpose, to concretely show where my thoughts strayed from the truth, where my feelings were contaminated, and where my decisions lacked alignment with divine principles. It was like a patient teacher who points out every error in an essay, not to embarrass the student, but to help them improve their writing. Here, the text is our soul, and the pen that corrects it is the purifying fire of the Spirit. The more we allow this teacher to work within us, the clearer and more impactful the interchange becomes. The impact of these revelations isn't limited to fleeting emotions, but bears lasting fruit. Changing our mindset means altering habits, redefining goals, and, above all, renewing our faith so that it becomes practical and visible in our daily lives. Each decision we make after this type of vision carries a different weight, knowing it was preceded by divine intervention, by guidance that emerged in a moment of stillness while we slept. It's a transformation happening almost imperceptibly, but with real consequences, restored relationships, aligned life purpose, and the courage to face challenges previously avoided. The more we learn about prophetic dreams, the more we understand that we are not witnessing something strange, supernatural, but rather a consistent method of God speaking to His children. Revelation is accompanied by physical sensations: heat, cold, ethereal sounds, at the same time, mental insights that clarify questions that seemed complicated. It's like having access to a draft script before the movie is shown. You know the protagonist's fate and, with that, can better prepare for what's to come. This clarity allows us to live with greater confidence and determination, knowing that, even in moments of uncertainty, a greater plan is being drawn up. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. Let's consider how these visions relate to our most common nighttime dreams, those that become nightmares when we carry unresolved concerns. Often, by understanding the symbolic pattern of these prophetic experiences, we can even anchor our minds in prayerful themes, intentionally seeking God's presence during our hours of rest. It's an approach that goes beyond academic understanding and becomes a spiritual practice. Before sleeping, we present our fears, doubts, and decisions to God, asking Him to speak to us through symbols, like a father calming his child and, at the same time, teaching him something valuable. Delving into this universe of dreams and visions of spiritual warning is, therefore, a journey of self-knowledge and closeness to the Creator. When we recognize the origin of these messages and learn to interpret them, we gain a new perspective on every aspect of our lives, from how we deal with conflicts to our career choices and relationships. The revelation that there is a time of refinement, of intense transformation, gives us the courage to face our greatest fears, knowing we are not alone in this process. The heavenly fire may be intense, but it reminds us that, in the end, we will be stronger, clearer, and more capable of fulfilling our mission on Earth. Comment: this makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. It was as if a deep, gentle voice broke the silence around me, whispering my name with both authority and tenderness. In that instant, I felt a presence so real that my senses sharpened almost supernaturally. The call to enter the furnace came, not as a simple command, but as an urgent invitation, capable of piercing the veil between the visible and the invisible. In my mind, a radiance of light appeared ahead, glowing with the heat radiating from the divine source, and I realized that each step toward that flame represented a conscious decision to embrace the transformation that awaited me. As I approached, heat began to envelop my body, at first subtly, like the warm touch of a blanket burning on hot coals, and then overwhelmingly, penetrating my skin and awakening dormant memories. It was a heat unlike anything I had ever experienced. It had the mischievous coolness of a campfire, but also the serene rigor of a forge, where raw metal becomes a masterpiece. Every inch of my skin seemed to pulse, revealing a sense of urgency that echoed in my soul. I could detect the intoxicating scent of incense, a blend of myrrh and frankincense, bringing to mind ancient temples where sacrifices and prayers mingled in the air. But alongside this sacred aroma was a metallic odor, as if the very floor of that furnace were made of red-hot iron dot. As my eyes adjusted to the intense glare, I noticed indistinct shapes dancing around me, like angelic shadows dancing in harmony with the flames. They were soft, though unintelligible, voices, seemingly reciting songs of redemption, of liberation. These voices didn't enter my ears, but echoed in my mind, awakening memories of poor decisions, of times when my faith wavered. With each spiritual note, a hidden truth unfolded before me, a split second in which I saw the reflection of my own imperfections projected onto the burning walls. Each step forward required courage, as the impact of the heat seemed to test the limits of my body and mind. I felt the soles of my feet touching a living surface, as if the earth were being shaped at every moment by a greater force. The light emanating from the flames wasn't blinding. On the contrary, it illuminated aspects of my personality I'd never dared to face. It was like exploring the backstage of my own heart, pulling back rusty curtains to reveal what had always remained hidden until then. Amidst this intense sensory experience, a profound silence fell for a brief second, as if God wanted to ensure I understood every detail before proceeding. It was in that instant that I felt the weight of my past decisions. Each wrong choice presented itself as a fragment of impure metal, demanding refinement. The heavenly furnace acted as a supernatural mirror, showing me not only what I was, but also who I could become after the purification process. There was a moment when I felt a shiver run down my spine, not of fear, but of anticipation. Something grand was about to happen. As the heat increased, I began to notice a sensation of expansion in my chest, as if the fire were making room for something new. Each breath I took in that blessed environment seemed deeper, filling my lungs with a different oxygen, imbued with grace. It was as if the air itself was tempered by divine will, urging my soul to shed the shackles of the past and embrace a new mindset. There, I realized that true transformation occurs not only when the fire burns externally, but especially when it operates within, refining the dark corners of our being. The heat, at times, took on almost palpable contours, enveloping my body. In a hypnotic dance, I could feel the heat touching every part of my being, challenging the natural resistance of the flesh, yet surprisingly without destroying. It was a merciful fire, burning to renew, not to extinguish, and as these sacred flames worked within me, a startling reality revealed itself. Angelic voices began to intone words of encouragement, confirming that I was not there by chance, but for a divine purpose. The revelation of this purpose was a flash of understanding, a brief moment, but capable of transforming the entire journey that lay ahead. Amidst this whirlwind of sensations, I also smelled the unique scent of white roses floating in the air. This delicate aroma mingled with the scent of hot metal and incense, creating a contrast that made me understand that, even in the most intense fire, there is the gentleness and tenderness of the Father. It was a reminder that purification and love go hand in hand, that the heavenly furnace is not simply a test of endurance, but an act of divine compassion. In that moment, the impact of this revelation brought me to tears, for I understood, for the first time, that my weaknesses were not grounds for condemnation, but for compassion. And then came supreme clarity. The light of the flames concentrated on a point before me, shining like a miniature sun, and a warmth so sweet enveloped my heart that I felt the weight of the past lift from me, as if a thick veil had been lifted. Every painful memory, every mistake seemed to evaporate into luminous vapor, leaving space for the living flame of the Spirit to ignite within me. It was a moment of profound revelation. I understood that the true journey of faith is not without trials, but consists of allowing each trial to become a portal of transformation. As I experienced this sensory peak, I realized the furnace was fulfilling its greater purpose, not just refining metals, but shaping the soul, honing unshakable courage and faith. There was a searing heat, yes, but also a gentle flame that comforted, enfolded, and guided. It was like walking through a corridor of fire, where each step brought me closer to my true identity in God. And, even without realizing it, each spark of that heavenly furnace was already beginning to sculpt my story of redemption. Comment here. I'm on this journey to now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. The expression heavenly furnace is not just a poetic image, but a living metaphor that reveals the purification process God desires to work in each of us. When we look at Scripture, we find passages like Malachi 3:2-3, where God is compared to a refiner who sits refining silver and gold, purifying people with fire and judgment. This same fire, however, is not vengeful. It symbolizes the purification of character, removing the impurities that prevent us from reflecting God's glory. Just as gold must pass through fire to eliminate its dross and reveal its true value, our minds and hearts are subjected to intense decisions that reveal the hidden truth about who we truly are. This heavenly furnace, therefore, has a dual impact: judgment and transformation. Judgmentally, it exposes our dissonant thoughts and attitudes, bringing to light those limiting beliefs or hidden motivations that sabotage our growth. But, equally, the journey of refinement is a demonstration of God's compassionate love, which desires not only to condemn but also to offer a journey of inner metamorphosis. Imagine a sculptor who needs to remove excess stones so that the form hidden within the marble can be revealed. This is precisely the role of divine flames in our lives: to sculpt our identity through truth, polishing our emotions so that faith may flourish with authenticity. The impact of this process extends to every aspect of our existence. Decisions previously made in a state of confusion are illuminated by spiritual revelations that emerge as flashes of wisdom. Our mindset adjusts, aligning with principles we often only knew but didn't fully live. In this sense, the heavenly furnace acts as a secret laboratory where our faith is tested, our courage strengthened, and our perspectives broadened. There are no shortcuts on this path. Each stage of purification demands surrender, humility, and a willingness to face our own vulnerability. Practical terms, this purification can manifest itself in changes to habits that no longer serve the divine purpose. Perhaps you feel a sudden impact, almost like an inner wake-up call. that compels you to abandon toxic relationships, review professional priorities, or reevaluate beliefs ingrained since childhood. It's a transformation that doesn't happen overnight, but unfolds in stages. First comes conviction, then the decision to change, and finally, the adoption of a new approach to life. It is in this context that the heavenly furnace reveals itself as a guide, both relentless and merciful. When we speak of judgment, it's important to understand that it's not an eternal condemnation, but a corrective process, similar to the training of an athlete who must endure the pain of intense training to reach peak performance. The furnace reveals where our strengths fail, perhaps in controlling our emotions, in how we deal with stress, or in how we make important decisions. And by exposing these weaknesses, the fire of the furnace allows divine grace to enter into action, offering tools for overcoming and teaching us to rely on a power that goes beyond our natural capacity. This revelation of character is not an isolated event. Rather, it connects with other biblical promises, such as 1 Peter 1:7, which compares our faith, tested by fire, to things of great worth, resulting in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. On this journey, each symbolic flame unearths a new dimension of our identity in God, revealing gifts and ministries that were previously hidden. It's as if, as we pass through this heavenly fire, we receive an upgrade in our soul system, gaining spiritual software that makes us more sensitive to the needs of others and better able to make decisions that promote life around us. As I ponder this hidden truth, I realize that the heavenly furnace also functions as a mirror, reflecting not only our imperfections, but also revealing the greater purpose that sustains our journey. Just as a lighthouse cuts through the darkness, God's protective fire eliminates the shadows within, allowing our faith to transcend fear and doubt. And as we embrace this process, we become living witnesses to the transformation He works, immersed in testimonies and revelations that strengthen not only our hearts but the entire community of faith that walks alongside us. That at each stage of this process, we are invited to make new decisions, redefining expectations and letting go of old certainties to live according to a renewed mindset. The furnace teaches us that, before we cry out for great signs and miracles, we must allow God to refine our character, preparing us to be clean and whole channels for the manifestation of His power. Only then will the impact of each miracle be attributed to the faithfulness of the one who called us to a journey of intimacy and continuous transformation. And here, in the heat of this revelation, we begin to understand the true meaning of being refined by fire, not as isolated setbacks, but as a lifestyle that values the daily process of refinement. Each trial builds character, each tear waters the seeds of a more robust faith, and each choice aligned with divine truth paves the way for deeper truths. In this dimension, the heavenly furnace ceases to be merely a visionary episode and becomes a permanent invitation to live a life marked by purification and continued grace. Now that you understand the symbolic and biblical essence of this refinement, feel the heat transform not only your thoughts, but also your daily actions. And if, upon hearing these revelations, your mind began to perceive areas that also need this purifying fire, keep that flame burning in your heart and prepare for the next stage of this journey of faith, where we will explore how the soul that passed through the heavenly furnace returned different, ready to fulfill its purpose with renewed courage and hope. Comment. This makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. In the overwhelming heat of the heavenly furnace, an inner conflict arose in my heart. On the one hand, the growing fear of not being able to withstand the heat that consumed every layer of impurity. On the other, the burning desire to be transformed, to emerge from that trial completely renewed. It was like being at the epicenter of an existential fork in the road, where every decision I made would influence my entire spiritual journey. Have you ever felt afraid of being exposed to your own weaknesses? It was at that point that I realized that the furnace not only refined me, but forced me to confront choices that were misaligned with the hidden truth God wished to reveal. As I walked through the flames, the feeling of vulnerability froze me. Inside, each deep breath felt like a risk, as I needed to inhale oxygen, tempered by the divine presence while simultaneously enduring the visceral impact of the fire. I remember thinking, what if I can't handle it? What if my inner fears become greater than my faith? This doubt, which sometimes paralyzes us in everyday life, became a magnetic force capable of revealing where my courage was still fragile. Yet there was also a spark of hope, a spark of boldness fueled by the certainty that this transformation was necessary for me to move forward with purpose. At that moment, understanding the true impact of purification involved accepting to simultaneous truths, the reality of judgment, which exposed my entire past, and the promise of redemption, which invited me to make new decisions. The analogy that came to mind was that of a rough diamond being polished. The cutter knows the inner value of that precious stone, but must wear away every imperfection until its unparalleled brilliance is revealed. I, in turn, needed to allow the fire to wear away the rough edges of my personality, pride, insecurities, impulsive attitudes so that a new mindset could emerge, guided by divine wisdom and the desire to serve with sincerity. As the heat enveloped me, I felt an emotional turmoil, eras of old pain, reflections of mistakes, and memories of impulsive choices that, on many occasions, took me away from what mattered most. It was there that I experienced the tension between the desire to flee and the conviction to remain. In some mysterious way, the environment itself invited me to remain steadfast, to not retreat from discomfort, for only there, in the furnace, would I reach the level of refinement God intended. The flames, though fearsome, resonated with my soul, as if assuring me that every second endured would not be in vain, but would bear fruits of faith, courage, and compassion. Transformation, in that moment, ceased to be an abstract concept and became a sensory experience. The heat imprinted on my body every nuance of regret. The light reflected in my eyes the new purpose that was emerging, and the sound of the fire, mixed with angelic murmurs, reinforced that the journey was worth every drop of spiritual sweat. It was there, in the cohabitation between fear and the desire for change, that I understood the importance of conscious decisions. Each time I allowed myself to move forward, I chose a life guided by the hidden truth that God gradually revealed as the heat reached its peak. My mind turned to everyday situations where I avoided confronting my own flaws. How many times had a change of mindset required the courage to renounce harmful habits, but I hesitated? How many decisions had I put off until tomorrow, accumulating weight on my soul until, through so much procrastination, I forgot my original purpose? In the heavenly furnace, procrastination had no place. Each moment was decisive, for it was in the fire that my spiritual identity was cemented. Understanding this process was like uncovering the backstage of a grand show. I realized that every detail, every adjustment, contributed to the final result of someone ready to live an authentic faith. With each heat wave, my inner resilience was tested and strengthened at the same time. It was a strange dialectic. The same element that threatened to destroy me also sustained me, as if carrying me in the invisible arms of a greater power. And, in this liminal environment between life and renewal, I felt the presence of a hidden truth that surpassed my wildest expectations. I discovered that transformation is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing process, and that the heavenly furnace serves as a model for all the trials we face: professional crises, family conflicts, moments of doubt, emotional uncertainty. In each of these scenarios, God invites us to enter the furnace of our own lives, to face fear and embrace the potential for growth. The impact of this revelation was so profound that, even after emerging from the vision, I began to face each challenge with a new attitude. I realized that fire doesn't just die out in the furnace, but can ignite a glow of resilience in our soul. When we make decisions based on the learning from this process, we cease to be mere spectators of circumstances and become conscious protagonists of our own story. The journey of refinement, then, proves to be a manual for personal transformation, teaching us to navigate uncertainty with faith, make ethical decisions, and cultivate a mindset aligned with divine purpose. But in this part of my experience, fear ceased to be an absolute enemy and became an indicator of where my faith still needed to be tested. Every accelerated heartbeat, every tremor provoked by the heat, pointed to internal areas that demanded surrender, forgiving someone, changing my attitude, trusting more deeply. That's when I understood that the true furnace isn't located in visible flames, but behind the scenes of the mind and heart, where change happens discreetly yet decisively. And, by immersing yourself in this process, the soul is tuned like an instrument, ready to produce songs of gratitude and testimony. Now that you've followed this dilemma between fear and desire for transformation, you can begin to see how the heavenly furnace reflects our own inner conflicts, inviting us to make decisions that shape our character and open the door to even deeper revelations. Each challenge, each choice I made in that symbolic environment prepared me for the next stage, where the flames gave way to a new perception of mission and service to others. Comment here. I'm on this journey to now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. During my descent into the heavenly furnace, every inch of my soul felt like it was being subjected to a purity test, as if I were standing before a divine potter repeatedly beating the vessel until all the air that could cause cracks was extracted. With each silent beat, I perceived an internal crack, memories of resentment, selfish motivations, thoughtless words I had spoken without considering their impact. With each surge of anger or insecurity, the heat revealed the exact spot where my faith needed repair, exposing the hidden truth I was reluctant to face. It was a moment of such profound revelations that my inner self felt exposed, unmasked, subjected to the fire that reveals not only who we are, but who we can become. As my soul descended, I felt the weight of every mistake I'd let slip by, as if the fire were saying, "This must go." And at the same time, I realized I wasn't alone. The heat wasn't just a destroyer of impurities, but an agent of transformation, shaping my mind and mindset for future decisions. As the celestial potter worked my heart, I understood that each fissure was an opportunity for inner rebirth, an invitation to abandon patterns that were keeping me from my purpose. It was like watching the backstage of a grand show, where each fine-tuning defines the grandeur of the final performance. The ordeal intensified as I felt the furnace not only burn away visible flaws but also delve deep into supposedly forgotten layers. There were unconfessed ambitions, unfair comparisons, and ancient fears, all resurfacing like smoke before being consumed by the flames. Each sublayer of emotion exposed an aspect of my character that needed to be refined. In the midst of this, I understood that purification goes beyond the surface. It's not enough to treat symptoms if we don't reach the root. Like a gardener who pulls out a weed by the roots to prevent it from returning, the fire acted like this gardener, ridding the fertile soil of my soul of elements that suffocated the true seed of faith. Then, time and time again, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, pain and relief, fear and hope coexisting within me, forming a complex symphony. The process was relentless, yet tender. It was the manifestation of a love that is not satisfied with the superficial, and desires that we become genuine reflections of divine light. With each exhalation of heat, an ancient truth dissolved into vapor, freeing space for the inner flame to breathe more freely. And so, the impact of this ordeal was not just feeling the fire, but witnessing its capacity for renewal, like a butterfly breaking free from its cocoon, transformed into something completely new. Despite the intensity, I learned that the descent corresponds to an inward movement, a dive into the depths of one's own soul, where every repressed emotion must be acknowledged and offered to the divine potter. At this stage, I understood that small, everyday decisions, the way we treat others, the words we choose, the honesty with which we face our weaknesses, play a decisive role in the degree of refinement. Every attitude not aligned with divine truth became fuel for the fire, while every gesture of humility and confession served as blessed water to extinguish the excess heat and highlight the radiance of the inner gold. The sensory narrative continued. I felt, in a moment, an almost musical sound, a soft tinkle like refined metals colliding, signaling that a heavy layer of impurity had just been removed. In that instant, I realized that true refinement comes not only from pain, but from the contrast between before and after, from the clarity that emerges when the soul becomes lighter. It was like watching a sculptor behind the scenes, who, after removing the excess stone, gradually reveals the graceful form that had been hidden from the beginning, awaiting the artist's patience and precision. Throughout this journey, my understanding of trials has completely changed. I stopped seeing challenges merely as external trials and began to recognize them as an essential part of the journey of transformation. In all of life's scenarios, emotional crises, professional conflicts, difficult decisions, I am moved by the memory of that purifying heat that taught me that every obstacle can be a tool for inner refinement. And so, the heavenly furnace ceased to be a distant vision and became a model for how we should face each moment of crisis, with the courage to expose our weaknesses and the wisdom to allow the fire of the Spirit to refine our character. And even though I hadn't yet emerged from the furnace, I began to sense a growing lightness, an awakening of hidden strengths, ready to blossom when the time came. The inner shadows, once threatening, became markers of progress, reminding me of where I came from and where I must go, with a renewed heart. This trial, though brutal, was the beginning of a new phase, where decisions are made from a place of freedom and revelation, no longer bound by fear, but driven by a faith that knows that each flame opens space for something magnificent. As I mentally emerged from that sacred furnace, I glimpsed how my life could reflect this ongoing process of refinement, healed relationships, redefined priorities, a hidden truth within me finally finding its voice. Transformation is not an instant, but a gradual step-by-step journey, shaped by the flames that visit us in the silent furnaces of everyday life. And, understanding this, I make the decision to live each day as if revisiting a refinery, attentive to every sign of impurity, ready to offer to the fire of divine love all that needs purification. This deep dive into the soul's trial prepares us to see God's greater purpose for our lives. And when you reflect on your own journey, you'll recognize that behind every challenge lies a furnace waiting to reveal the gold hidden within. Comment: this makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. The crucial moment of the vision arrived, the point at which the merciless heat gave way to an overwhelming peace, and everything seemed to conspire to reveal the true essence of the soul, refined by grace. It was there, at the apex of the experience, that the iron and fiery structure of the celestial furnace transformed into a gentle embrace, and the harshness of the flames gave way to a welcoming warmth, as if the divine heart itself had descended to touch my essence. What happened at the precise moment? Everything changed. I felt a complete silence, as if the entire universe held its breath, preparing to witness the most profound transformation I could ever imagine. In that second, a silver light coursed through every fold of my soul, illuminating dark corners where fear and doubt had reigned. It was more than mere clarity, it was a revelation that penetrated the core of my identity. dissolving emotional scars and replacing them with a renewed understanding of who I truly was, a beloved child, worthy of compassion and called to a mission of hope. A mindset previously armed with insecurities was now shaped by the conviction that every decision, no matter how small in our daily routine, carried the potential for eternal impact when aligned with the hidden truth of divine love. At this climax, there was no longer room for masks or justifications. Every impurity exposed during the ordeal was enveloped by this purifying light, and I felt, as never before, the weight of divine forgiveness. It was as if a river of mercy flowed from heaven, washing away every shred of pride, every shred of guilt, every vestige of self. The transformation ceased to be conceptual and became exuberantly real, visible even in the physical sensations of my body, which stilled in a state of absolute serenity, witnessing the renewing power of grace. At the same time, the vision revealed the behind the scenes of this celestial event. Angels with translucent wings moved in harmony, not as mere spectators, but as instruments of a divine orchestra, tuning every string of my being to emit notes of adoration and gratitude. I saw their faces radiant with compassion and heard, albeit inaudibly to human ears, the welcoming song that announced the birth of a new stage in my spiritual journey. It was a moment of revelations beyond any logical explanation, emotional and spiritual experience in perfect harmony. As the gentle flame embraced my mind, I understood that grace does not replace the process of refinement, it perfects it. The pure demonstration of love does not diminish the rigor of the fire, but rather makes each trial more meaningful, giving purpose to the difficult decisions I had had to make up until that point. It was in that moment that my understanding of transformation expanded. It was not simply about enduring the heat, but about actively accepting the metamorphosis that occurs when we surrender to divine will. The furnace was not an end in itself, but the gateway to a life lived to the fullest, where each choice reflects the glory of the one who refines us. With a light heart and clear vision, I was able to see the connection between this spiritual climax and everyday life, understanding that true metamorphosis happens when we allow grace to reach us at our most sensitive points, adapting our mindset to make wiser and more courageous decisions. The purification of the soul thus becomes a route map for our daily journey, signaling where we should invest faith, where we should ask for forgiveness, and where we should move forward with greater confidence. The impact of this revelation is not limited to a spectacular event, but reverberates in every act of love, in every word we choose, in every dream we dare to pursue. And this is how the heavenly furnace ceases to be merely a distant prophetic phenomenon and becomes a practical model of continuous transformation, an invitation to revisit each morning the backstage of our own soul and offer to the sacred fire what still needs to be refined. When we understand this dynamic, we realize that we are part of a much larger scenario than we imagined, guided by a force that operates not only in major crises, but in all the small decisions that make up life. Comment: this makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. As the intense heat of the heavenly furnace began to give way to an almost supernatural gentleness, I realized that what initially threatened to consume me was transforming into a source of profound peace. It was as if the flames, which had previously roared menacingly, now took on a tender whisper, enveloping my being in a mantle of consolation. Instead of the fear that gripped my chest, a serene certainty emerged that this was not a test to destroy me, but an invitation to rebirth. The journey of purification transcended the simple act of enduring the heat. It became an intimate dialogue between the soul seeking perfection and the divine grace that lovingly corrects. At that precise moment, I felt fear dissolve like wax exposed to the fire of mercy. Every fiber of my being vibrated, not with apprehension, but with gratitude for the forgiveness offered to me. It was a visceral experience. I felt forgiveness touch every poisoned memory of guilt, making the emotional wounds soft and vulnerable, ready to receive the healing balm. The sensation was similar to the moment we paint an old painting with new colors, covering cracks and stains, but without erasing the history those marks bore. Grace does not erase memories of wrongdoing. It transforms them into a testament to overcoming. As this transformation took place, I visualized a crystal clear river flowing through the remaining embers, bringing with it a refreshing breeze that circulated my mind. It was like a breath of fresh air after the most strenuous physical exertion, that breath of pure air that fills the lungs with renewed vitality. Each breath seemed to carry the message that I was being welcomed, not just judged. The peace generated was not passive. It had a tidal force that allowed it to shape thoughts, dissolve bitterness, and redefine decisions made in the past without discernment. The old mentality faded, giving way to an attitude more aligned with the hidden truth God wanted to reveal. I also felt the beauty of an inner reconciliation, as if the angelic voices that once announced trial now sang a song of hope. The emotional impact was so profound that my defenses yielded before divine compassion, and I realized that guilt, though real, no longer needed to dictate my worth. Instead of suffering under the weight of each mistake, I began to see each failure as a starting point for a new journey, where each step forward would be marked by choices grounded in the confidence that grace sustains even the most fragile souls. At the height of this moment, I understood that the experience of grace does not happen merely as a reaction to suffering, but as an active movement of God in our transformation. It is like a sculptor who, after polishing a stone, applies a special varnish to bring out the inner colors, revealing the splendor hidden beneath the original dirt. Thus, the furnace not only revealed the impurities, but grace invested them with even greater value, demonstrating that each painful examination serves to reveal potentialities that would never have been discovered without the combined action of fire and divine balm. With each breath of that heavenly atmosphere, my heart grew calm, not in the absence of challenges, but in the certainty that God's provision extends beyond trials. I realized that the peace generated by the refining warmth brings with it a new kind of courage, capable of facing emotional crises, professional challenges, and difficult decisions without the paralysis of fear. It was a valuable lesson. The same process that exposes weaknesses also imprints in us the resilience necessary to triumph over any adverse situation. Recalling that moment, I feel the gentleness of forgiveness fill my being again, as if a mantle of light settled over my shoulders, shielding me from the doubts that once haunted me. The clarity that emerged was so intense that every aspect of my life gained a new perspective. Broken relationships began to be seen as opportunities for restoration, postponed projects as chances to start over with wisdom, hasty decisions as lessons to guide future choices. Grace not only erases the past, but redirects our gaze to the value of experiences, however painful they may have been. As this process of renewal deepened, I realized that my identity was aligning with a greater purpose, and that, ironically, it was in the silence and peace granted by the warmth that I found the impetus to act with greater conviction. Inner peace does not contradict action. On the contrary, it powerfully drives it. I discovered that true transformation solidifies when we allow the serenity achieved in our hearts to guide our daily decisions, imprinting on each choice the character honed in that heavenly fire. Amidst this experience, a final nuance of emotion emerged, the feeling of being completely understood by the one who created me, a feeling of intimacy that surpasses any human closeness. It was as if all the layers of defenses fell away, revealing a fundamental truth. We are loved, not despite our imperfections, but through them, for it is in them that the power of grace manifests most brilliantly. This emotional impact left me feeling raw, renewing my faith and my purpose in sharing this message. And so I emerged from that moment of grace with new strength, ready to respond to the decisions life would present me with a transformed mindset and courage. The peace the fire bestowed guided my every step, reminding me that even amidst the flames of future challenges, I can trust that the experience of grace will always envelop me, converting fear into comfort and uncertainty into confidence. This revelation sets the stage for understanding how this soul, now renewed, was sent back into the world with a mission to bring light where there was once shadow, revealing the continuity of a journey shaped by purpose and hope. Comment. This makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Perhaps God wants to refine you too, bringing revelations directly to your heart so that what needs to be transformed in your life can surface. When we reflect on the power of this vision of the heavenly furnace, we realize that it doesn't just exist in the background of nighttime dreams, but manifests itself in every situation in which we are called to make painful decisions that reshape our mindset. Imagine, for a moment, being at the point where your own soul whispers unmet needs, and in that restlessness, you feel an urgent invitation to abandon old behaviors and embrace something greater. This is the practical application, recognizing that all crises, emotional, professional, or spiritual, can be gateways to transformation, episodes in which grace and fire meet to shape us. As you connect this vision to your reality, consider the thought patterns you unconsciously repeat. Perhaps you've grown accustomed to seeing obstacles as immutable, failing to realize that within every difficulty lies the potential for hidden metamorphosis. God, in His wisdom, often doesn't change our circumstances immediately. Instead, He allows us to be heated by life's pressures, only to reveal the hidden truth behind our greatest fears. In this context, the proposal is simple, yet profound. Instead of running away from the test, embrace it as an intentional process of refinement, where your choices begin to reflect, not insecurity, but courage grounded in faith. Notice how each challenge required a different approach from you: the courage to speak the truth, the humility to correct a mistake, the boldness to forgive someone who hurt your heart. These moments are like sparks in the furnace of the soul, turning points that have a lasting impact on your journey. And by recognizing this dynamic, you gain the power to reprogram your mindset and guide future decisions, knowing that you are on a path of continuous growth. It's a process similar to that of an athlete who trains day after day. Sweat and pain are not just suffering, but elements that hone inner strength and prepare the body and mind for even greater challenges. When I speak of transformation, I'm not referring to superficial behavioral changes, but to a renewal that originates from within, moving from the inner self to external actions. The vision of the heavenly furnace serves as a vivid example of this mechanism. The intense heat reveals the deepest parts of our being, and the grace that follows fills each mark left with meaning, showing that God knows exactly where and how to work. And it is at this point that personal reflection becomes valuable. Which areas of your life still resist the heat of refinement? In what decisions do you continue to tolerate small imperfections, accepting excuses that actually hinder your development? Bringing this message into everyday life means, for example, stopping before reacting impulsively to criticism, allowing faith and patience to guide your words instead of old defensive reflexes. It also means recognizing that forgiveness, though challenging, is a way to allow the fire of grace to fall on emotional wounds, bringing healing rather than deep scars. These practical applications may seem small compared to the grandeur of a prophetic vision, but they are what, taken together, build the solid foundation of an unshakable faith, capable of facing any adversity. In my own story, I realized that, after the climax of purification, the most significant changes occurred in the details of everyday life. The way I approach financial problems, the patience in the face of a difficult relationship, the conviction when talking to someone who doubts their worth. Each of these small decisions resulted from a mindset honed by fire, from an understanding of the importance of not ignoring the inner heat that signals the need to look inward and make adjustments. And by doing so, I discovered that the impact extends beyond my own existence, positively influencing family, friends, and coworkers, generating a ripple effect of transformation. It is from this perspective that prophetic vision ceases to be a distant narrative and becomes a map for each of us. When we allow our emotions to be exposed and refined, we open the way for revelations that guide wiser choices, decisions that have the power to change destinies. Consider taking a moment in silence today to reflect on your personal furnace that experience that, however uncomfortable, may be working to reveal a hidden treasure within. This practice of introspection, fueled by prayer or meditation, becomes an exercise in partnership with the divine, where we align our plans with the will of the one who understands the deepest workings of our souls. The journey of transformation is long and often requires patience to endure degrees of heat that seem excessive. However, remember that each phase of the process has a specific purpose: to expose what corrodes your faith, to lead you to decisions that fail to take into account hidden truth, and finally, to reveal a newfound confidence to act with spiritual authority. This dynamic teaches us that true metamorphosis is not a one-off, but a lifestyle, a pact to allow the furnace of divine love to operate even when the flames are not ostensibly visible, but burn silently in the core of your being. 2. Conclude this reflection without ending the video. As the story will continue to unfold, I leave you with an invitation. Look at the areas of your life where you still feel discomfort and recognize that this discomfort may be a sign that the furnace is working. Instead of resisting, observe what is being revealed, learn from past decisions that need to be adjusted, and embrace the transformation that only grace combined with fire can bring about. This is the proposal for life that emerges from this vision, a constant journey of refinement, where each choice becomes a more faithful reflection of who we were created to be. Comment here. I'm on this journey to now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Over the years, we have received numerous testimonies from ordinary people who, like me, have experienced dreams and visions of spiritual warning, finding themselves in situations where they felt their souls being refined in a symbolic fire. A woman from Belo Horizonte shared that she dreamed of her past collapsing around her, and as the flames consumed every guilty memory, she felt such a profound peace that, upon waking, she decided to completely reform her family relationships. Another story we received came from a young man in Porto Alegre, who, during a financial crisis, dreamed of flames swirling around him, revealing where he had relied on human strategies instead of seeking divine wisdom. From that experience, he emerged determined to change the way he handled his finances, experiencing a positive impact that today influences his prosperity mindset, and there is no shortage of statistics on similar encounters. Informal surveys conducted by ministers and scholars of the prophetic tradition show that about 70% of people who report these dreams claim to have experienced significant behavioral changes in the following weeks, reinforcing the collective power of these experiences. These testimonies are not mere isolated cases, but evidence of the power of a process that transcends geographic and cultural barriers. The channel through which I shared this message was built precisely to gather these stories, giving voice to those who previously felt alone in the face of their visions. Our credibility is born not from grand theological titles, but from the accumulation of lives touched by revelations that came in moments of silence and surrender. Over the course of dozens of episodes, we present stories of people of all ages who felt the call to enter an internal furnace and, after this experience, saw their attitudes radically transformed. from professionals who abandoned empty careers in search of purpose, to parents who rediscovered the importance of raising their children with values of faith and compassion. It is precisely this authority built through practice and community that strengthens our message. When you realize you are not alone, that there is a community of faith ready to listen, support, and share wisdom, the journey of transformation gains new momentum. The heavenly furnace ceases to seem like a distant phenomenon and becomes a resource of hope, a model that can be applied to every test of daily life. When we understand that God acts consistently, using prophetic dreams as a means of course adjustment, our vision expands, and we begin to see beyond immediate circumstances. We see divine engineering behind crises, revelations that prepare our minds for wiser and more courageous decisions. And this impact isn't limited to the individual. Each transformed person serves as a catalyst for change within their circle of influence, whether in the workplace, family, or study and prayer groups. Therefore, the collective power of these experiences strengthens the channel's authority. We are living witnesses to a community that, united by faith, has become a laboratory of spiritual transformation. By sharing these stories, we offer not only theoretical information but also a practical map of how to deal with trials, reinforcing that the journey of refinement is neither solitary nor random, but part of a larger restoration plan. When you hear stories from other brothers and sisters who have gone through similar processes, you begin to notice patterns of revelation. The heat of a dream that exposes impurities, the gentle voice that calls us to enter the fire, the climactic moment when grace replaces fear, and the life that is renewed with decisions grounded in faith. These patterns confirm the veracity of what I experienced, showing that it is not something fanciful, but a legitimate spiritual dynamic, recognized in various historical contexts and supported by the Bible itself. Recalling the words of Malachi and 1 Peter, we realize that these manifestations have always been present, guiding God's people throughout the centuries. The channel's authority, therefore, lies not in a single person, but in the sum total of narratives, in the convergence of revelations that, despite having reached different hearts at different times, follow the same structure of refinement, purification, and profound transformation. And it is this convergence that gives us the confidence to affirm, if you've ever felt the restlessness of an inner calling, if you've ever noticed patterns that repeat themselves in your dreams and in your days, there's a high probability that God is working a process of refinement within you. This invitation is universal, because we are all clay in the hands of the divine potter, ready to be molded according to the most sublime design. Connecting these testimonies to your reality is recognizing that you are part of this community of transformation. Each account amplifies the power of our message, reinforcing the impact of the hidden truth that surfaces when we are willing to enter the furnace of our own being. And, by assimilating this collective power, we are encouraged to look within, with courage, knowing that, at the end of each trial, there is genuine restoration waiting to lead us to a new stage of faith and purpose. Comment: this makes sense to me now. I want to delve even deeper into this subject. In short, the heavenly furnace exposes our weaknesses, purifies our intentions, and reveals the gold of a renewed faith, capable of influencing each of our decisions with a clarity that only grace, combined with divine fire, can provide. Throughout this journey, we have seen how the initial vision reaches us with warmth and light, how the internal conflict between fear and the desire for transformation drives us to choose life over stagnation, and how the symbolic fire works behind the scenes of the soul, breaking down the layers of impurity until the hidden truth is revealed in the form of peace, forgiveness, and purpose. We have also learned that this process is not isolated. Thousands of brothers and sisters corroborate this experience with accounts that confirm the real impact of these prophetic trials. Each element, the sensory call to enter the fire, the descent through exposed feelings, the climax of purification by grace, and the practical application in our daily lives, invites us to live not just as spectators, but as protagonists of a living metaphor of inner transformation. The strength of this narrative lies in the fact that each of us can experience our own daily furnace, that relationship crisis that threatens to consume us, the professional dilemma that makes us question our calling, or the emotional conflict that signals the need to forgive and begin anew. By recognizing these moments as opportunities for refinement, we leave behind a mindset of fear and embrace an attitude of continuous growth, where decisions are guided by the conviction that God is lovingly working in every detail of our journey. We then discover that true change is not the fruit of isolated human effort, but of the encounter between the purifying fire and the anointing of grace, which together refine our character and open space for revelations that transform dreams into missions and doubts into certainties. This recap is an invitation for you to identify which parts of your life still cry out for the warmth of purification and the balm of grace. Perhaps you realize that old habits need to be left behind, or that a long-delayed decision now requires the courage to face the inner fire. Remember that each step, the exposure of impurities, the confrontation with fear, the experience of peace, and the practical application forms a cycle of revelations that nourish a resilient mindset. and by internalizing this cycle, you begin to live in a rhythm of constant renewal where each challenge is a chance to reveal a hidden potential, a truth that only the sacred fire can illuminate. With this perspective, your life ceases to be a succession of random events and becomes an intentional plot, guided by the behind the scenes of a divine process that works to align your decisions and expand your impact on the world. It's as if you've been given a privileged script, but you must enter the furnace to understand every detail and experience the emotions that make up each scene. And, upon emerging, you carry with you not only the conviction of having been validated by prophetic revelation, but also the commitment to live as someone who knows the importance of burning in the fire. Not to consume oneself, but to become a living light. Comment: this makes sense to me, and here we come to the end of this journey through the heavenly furnace. And if you've stayed with me until the very last detail, I want to thank you for this invaluable company. If what we shared today has brought some light to your heart, subscribe to the channel so we can continue walking together on paths of transformation and revelation. Leave a "I'm with you" until the end in the comments to let me know you've made it this far and felt the power of this message. And if this content touched you, leave a heartfelt like, showing that our connection makes all the difference. There's a video here that complements this topic with more details on how to bring this refinement into your daily life. Click and stay with me there as we delve even deeper into this transformation. See you soon.